I gave up my family business and hometown just to help her chase her dream job. But one accidental glance at her group chat exposed every secret, every lie, and every man she swore was just a friend. Before watching the video, please tell us in the comments, which country are you watching from? My name is Jacob Turner, and I'm 31 years old. I never believed betrayal could come from a smile, until the day her own words destroyed the illusion of love I'd built around her. When Emma and I first met, it felt like something out of a movie. She was ambitious, sharp, and always talking about how we'd build an empire together. I believed every word. I left my family business in Texas, moved across the country, and poured everything into her dream job offer in New York. We found a small apartment, made it our home, and for a while, everything seemed perfect. I worked long hours freelancing while she climbed the corporate ladder. She'd come home tired but excited, telling me stories about her coworkers, her work besties, and how proud she was of me for supporting her. I smiled every time, thinking we were unstoppable, two people against the world. But slowly, things started changing. Her phone became her closest friend. Late-night messages, random laughter at texts, and girls' nights that stretched until dawn became common. I tried to ask once, gently, "Is everything okay?" She smiled and kissed me, saying, "You worry too much, babe." I wanted to believe her. I told myself this is what modern relationships looked like: busy, independent, trusting. Yet deep down, something in my gut told me the trust was only one-sided. There were moments her eyes avoided mine, her hugs felt hollow, and her laughter sounded forced. I brushed it off, convincing myself I was just being paranoid. But love makes you blind, until the truth decides to open your eyes for you. The night it happened was ordinary. Pizza, movies, and her scrolling through her phone, giggling now and then. She asked me to play a song from her playlist while she went to shower, tossing her phone onto the couch. That single moment of carelessness would change everything. I didn't go looking for proof. It found me in a single notification that popped up, glowing like a warning light before a crash. It started subtly, small things that didn't seem worth worrying about at first. Emma began dressing differently for work, spending more time in front of the mirror than usual. I'd ask if she had meetings or events, and she'd shrug with a quick, "Just want to look good for myself." I nodded, pretending to believe her. But part of me knew something had changed. Her schedule grew unpredictable. Nights that used to be hours became overtime. She'd come home smelling faintly of cologne that wasn't mine. When I asked, she'd say it must have been from coworkers or the subway. I tried to let it go, convincing myself that trust meant not questioning every detail. But deep down, that quiet voice of doubt started to grow louder. Her phone became a fortress. Before, she'd leave it anywhere, unlocked, forgotten. Now it was always face down, notifications silenced, her thumb ready to swipe away messages before I could glance. One night, I caught her deleting something as I walked in. She looked up quickly and said, "Just clearing work stuff." Her tone was too sharp, too defensive for such a simple excuse. She also stopped talking about her day. The stories she used to tell with excitement faded into one-word answers. "How was work?" I'd ask. "Fine." "Anyone new on your team?" "No one important." Her warmth had been replaced by distance. I'd lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering when love had started to feel like guessing a password. Still, I kept giving her the benefit of the doubt. I blamed stress, long hours, maybe even the city itself. I told myself we'd find our rhythm again. But then came the group chat, her girls. I used to hear her laugh while texting them, inside jokes I never understood. Lately, though, those laughs had turned into secretive smiles and sudden silences. One evening, she was sitting beside me on the couch, typing quickly, giggling softly. I leaned over, curious. She locked her phone instantly, pretending to stretch. My heart sank, but I said nothing. I just smiled weakly and turned back to the TV. The next day, she left her phone charging before heading to a quick errand. It buzzed once, then again, and I saw her friends' names flash across the screen. I didn't open it, but something about the message's tone, teasing, playful, sent a chill down my spine. Something inside me whispered that the truth was already there, hiding behind those laughing emojis and half-written sentences. I just didn't know yet how much it would destroy. The walls were cracking. I just didn't realize the whole house was about to collapse. It happened on a Friday night, one of those ordinary evenings that start quiet and end with your world burning down. Emma was getting ready for another girls' dinner. I sat on the couch, half watching TV, pretending not to notice how much effort she was putting into her makeup. She wore a new dress, one I'd never seen before. tight enough to leave nothing to the imagination. When I told her she looked beautiful, she smiled faintly, but her eyes didn't meet mine. She tossed me her phone before leaving. "Can you cue up my playlist?" she asked casually. I smiled, happy she was still including me in something, even something small. As I unlocked her phone, a notification slid down the screen before I could tap the music app. The preview froze my breath mid-chest. It read, "He's here now. Wish me luck." My hand went cold. The message was from her best friend, Megan, and it clearly wasn't meant for me. My heart thudded in my ears. I told myself it had to be a joke, some inside reference I didn't understand. But curiosity turned into panic as I opened the chat. What I saw next shattered everything I thought I knew about her. The chat was full of messages from Emma and her closest friends. They weren't talking about work or clothes or life updates. They were talking about me, about how Jacob still doesn't know, about how tonight's the night, and about how she was finally getting what she really wanted. My name came up like I was some burden, some gullible fool keeping her comfortable while she lived another life behind my back. My hands shook as I scrolled further. There were pictures, selfies at bars I didn't know she'd been to, inside jokes I didn't understand, and a nickname I'd never heard. E. One message from her friend read, "You're so bad for doing this to him, but he's so sweet it's kind of funny." Another said, "Don't worry, he'll never find out. Guys like him never do." I couldn't move. The woman who had cried in my arms, who had told me I was her world, was laughing about me with people who called me boring, predictable, soft. Every word felt like a knife, every emoji another twist. When she came home hours later, she was glowing. I forced myself to smile, pretending everything was normal. She sat beside me, scrolling through her phone again, unaware that her secret had already exploded in my hands. That night, while she slept peacefully beside me, I stared at the ceiling, replaying every message in my head. The betrayal wasn't just the affair. It was the performance, the cruelty of knowing she could smile at me after saying those things. My trust in her was gone, replaced by a cold, steady resolve. She didn't know it yet, but her words had lit a fuse, and soon, every lie she ever told would burn her world to the ground. What would you do if someone you loved betrayed you like this? Comment below. That night, after she fell asleep, I sat in the dark beside her, the glow from her phone lighting up my hands. My chest felt hollow, but my mind was razor sharp. I opened the chat again, scrolling through every cruel word she and her friends had written about me. It wasn't just gossip, it was mockery. I wasn't her boyfriend anymore in their eyes. I was a joke they passed around for entertainment. One message read, "He's so clueless, it's almost cute." Another said, "You better delete this chat before he sees it." My stomach twisted. They knew. They all knew. And she led them. Every heart emoji, every "you go girl" after she described her affair, made my blood run cold. It wasn't just betrayal. It was humiliation. I started taking screenshots, one after another. Every message, every timestamp, every photo. I saved them all. I didn't know what I'd do with them yet, but I couldn't let her rewrite this story later. The truth had to stay intact. It was strange. The more I read, the less it hurt. My sadness hardened into something sharper, a calm kind of anger, the kind that doesn't scream or cry, the kind that plans. By 3 a.m., I had hundreds of screenshots, a full record of her lies. My hands trembled as I stared at the folder. She was still sleeping beside me, breathing peacefully, completely unaware that her world was about to collapse. I looked at her face and felt nothing. Not hate, not love, just emptiness. She had burned through every emotion I had left. In the morning, I acted normal. I kissed her forehead, made her coffee, and asked about her plans. She smiled. Sweet, fake, perfect. If she noticed my silence, she didn't mention it. The lies rolled off her tongue so easily that it almost impressed me. Almost. The next few days were a performance. I kept collecting, listening, pretending. Every new lie she told became fuel. I didn't want to explode. I wanted her to destroy herself, using her own words. At work, I printed a few screenshots and sealed them in an envelope. One for her boss, another for her parents, who adored me, and one for her friend Megan, the one who'd encouraged her the most. I wasn't going to scream or beg. I'd let her own messages speak louder than I ever could. By the time I finished, I had everything ready. A full record of betrayal, documented by the hands that caused it. She thought she was clever. She thought I was weak. But she forgot. I was the one who'd been watching the entire time. Her lies were her weapon. But soon, her words would be my revenge. I kept smiling like nothing had happened, playing the role she expected. Every morning, I kissed her forehead, hiding the storm brewing inside me. I returned her messages with gentle words and practiced indifference daily. She believed I was the same man she once knew and trusted. That false calm gave me time to collect what I needed. I copied screenshots to multiple folders, each labeled with careful precision. I printed receipts, timestamps, and messages until my hands grew sore. Each printed page felt heavier, proof that her lies were real. I folded documents into envelopes addressed to people who mattered most. One envelope went to her boss, another to her parents, another stored safely. I didn't send everything at once. Patience was part of the plan. At night I read the messages again, turning pain into focus. My anger cooled into something sharp, methodical, and eerily calm. I rehearsed conversations silently, preparing for reactions I might face later. I started learning names I'd never cared to remember before. Colleagues, managers, and mutual friends became important pieces of evidence. I made a list of people who should know the whole truth. None of this was impulsive. It was calculated, measured, and deliberate. I also messaged an anonymous tip to HR, attaching a small sample. I wanted institutions to act before rumors could die in whispers. When small consequences started appearing, I felt nothing but quiet satisfaction. Yet, I refused to gloat. Dignity would be my silent revenge. I practiced a toast in front of the mirror, voice steady and low. The speech wasn't meant to shame. It was meant to reveal truth plainly. I bought new clothes for the evening, simple and painfully clean. I rehearsed walking into a room and holding myself like a man reborn. Friends asked why I seemed calmer. I shrugged and smiled with ease. Inside, I imagined the moment her laughter would finally become a hush. I also protected my own life from her fallout and chaos. I transferred finances discreetly, closing accounts she could no longer access. I moved important documents to a safety deposit box downtown. Preparing for fallout meant securing myself, not tearing her down personally. I rehearsed leaving the room if people started shouting or weeping. I promised myself I would not stoop to petty cruelty afterward. My goal was clarity, not vengeance that would stain my own soul. Sometimes I pictured her face when the screenshots met open eyes. I imagined silence falling like a curtain at her sudden exposure. The thought of her losing her comfortable lies felt almost righteous. Still, my hands trembled before I sealed the final envelope. I placed everything in a bag and sat with it through dawn. When morning came, I felt lighter, ready for the next step. I had converted betrayal into a plan, and the plan felt fair. The night of Emma's company holiday dinner arrived faster than I expected. I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting my tie, steadying my breathing. My reflection didn't look like the man she had betrayed. It looked like someone who had already let go of pain. The calm before justice. When we walked into the restaurant, she held my arm like everything was fine. She laughed with her coworkers, introduced me as the love of her life, and smiled in that polished, fake way I once found charming. I greeted everyone politely, scanning the room, the very people who thought they knew us. They had no idea what was coming. Halfway through dinner, her boss stood to make a toast. Emma squeezed my hand and whispered, "Say something sweet about us, babe." I nodded, the faintest smile curling on my lips. I stood slowly, holding my glass, and the room fell quiet. "I'd love to," I said. "But before I do, I think it's only fair everyone here knows the real Emma Turner." Her eyes widened. Her hand froze midair. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out a small USB. "This," I said calmly, "holds every message, photo, and lie written about me in Emma's little group chat. It's funny. I didn't find it by snooping. I found it by accident, the same way the truth always finds liars." Whispers filled the room. As I connected the USB to the projector, the screen lit up with screenshots, her texts, her jokes, the messages where she and her friends laughed about how easy I was to fool. Gasps echoed. Someone dropped a fork. Emma's boss stood frozen as the group chat scrolled automatically, each line tearing down her perfect reputation. Emma jumped from her seat, yelling, "Turn it off! This isn't fair!" But no one moved. Her coworkers stared at her like they were seeing a stranger. Her boss finally said quietly, "Emma, is this real?" She looked around desperately, tears starting to form. It was just venting. It was just a joke. Her excuses crumbled under the weight of her own words on the screen. I let the silence hang. Then I turned to the crowd and said, "I gave up everything for her. My job, my home, my family's trust. She gave me nothing but lies. So I decided it was time the truth worked overtime." I set my glass down, walked past her trembling figure, and left the restaurant. Behind me, I could hear the murmurs, the disbelief, the end of her carefully built world collapsing like glass. I didn't need to look back. I didn't need to shout. Her own words had done all the talking. When I stepped outside, the cold air hit my face, and for the first time in months, I could breathe freely. If you were in my place, would you forgive or walk away? Tell me in comments. The night after the dinner, I didn't sleep, not because I was haunted, but because I finally felt free. The sound of her shouting still echoed faintly in my mind, but it didn't hurt anymore. It just felt distant, like a bad movie I'd already watched too many times. By morning, her messages started flooding in. First came the anger. How could you embarrass me like that? Then came the excuses. You twisted everything. It was just harmless talk. And finally, the desperation. Please, Jacob, can we talk? Please don't give up on us. I didn't reply. Every text she sent only reminded me how skilled she was at rewriting history. A few days later, I heard she'd been suspended from her job. Her boss couldn't ignore the screenshots, especially the ones where she mocked clients and co-workers. Her friends, the same ones who cheered her on, vanished. Not one of them stood by her. Betrayal has a funny way of coming full circle. She showed up at my apartment one evening, makeup smeared, eyes red. She looked nothing like the confident woman I once knew. I lost everything, she whispered, trembling. My job, my friends, my reputation. I looked at her calmly and said, "You didn't lose it, Emma. You threw it away." She broke down crying, asking for forgiveness, saying she wanted to start fresh. But you can't rebuild a house you burned yourself. I stood silent for a moment, then said, "Do you remember what your friends called me in that chat? The safe option? The guy too boring to ever hurt you?" She nodded weakly. I smiled sadly. "You were right about one thing. I'm not like you. I don't hurt people for fun. I just let the truth do the work." She begged me not to walk away. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But pity isn't love, and forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. I told her I hoped she'd learn something from all of it, that someday she'd understand how easily her lies had cost her everything real. Then I closed the door, not with anger, but peace. In the weeks that followed, I started living again. I reconnected with old friends, picked up my family business again, and moved back home. People kept asking what happened between us, but I never told the story. The screenshots had already spoken louder than I ever could. For the first time in years, I woke up without checking my phone, without wondering if someone was lying to me. Silence, I realized, wasn't lonely anymore. It was freedom. The truth had set me free, and her own lies had become her prison. Months passed, and life slowly rebuilt itself piece by piece. The chaos, the heartbreak, the anger, all of it had faded into something quieter, something steadier. I learned that silence isn't weakness, it's control. It's power disguised as peace. While Emma's world had fallen apart, mine was beginning again. I started focusing on the things I'd abandoned for her. The family business welcomed me back, and for the first time in years, I felt useful again, grounded. My parents never asked about Emma. They didn't have to. The relief in their eyes when they saw me smiling again said everything. I spent my weekends fixing up my old truck, hiking trails I used to love, and finding comfort in the kind of solitude I once feared. Sometimes, people from her city would message me. "Hey man, saw what happened. That was brutal." Others told me she'd moved away, tried to start over somewhere new. I never replied. I didn't need updates on her life anymore. She was a closed chapter, one I had no reason to reread. The funny thing about revenge is that it loses meaning once you heal. I thought exposing her would be the grand finale, the ultimate satisfaction. But the real victory came later, in the quiet moments when I realized she no longer had power over me. Her betrayal didn't define me anymore. My response did. One afternoon, I found an old photo of us, smiling, carefree, naive. For a second, I almost felt sorry for that version of her, the one before the lies. But then I remembered the words she'd written, the laughter in those group chats, and I placed the photo back in the drawer where it belonged. Some memories don't deserve closure. They deserve dust. Now, when people ask if I'd ever take her back, I just smile. No, I say simply, because I learned to love the silence she left behind. That silence had taught me more than her words ever could. It taught me that walking away isn't losing, it's winning without noise. The night I finally deleted the last screenshot, I sat on my balcony and looked out at the city lights. I felt light, free. The same phone that once delivered betrayal now only carried peace. I realized I didn't need revenge stories or apologies. I just needed myself, the man who survived her lies and still believed in love, even after it broke him. In the end, silence wasn't my revenge. It was my rebirth. This is how my girlfriend betrayed me. Should I forgive or move on? Tell me in comments. If this story reminded you that strength doesn't always roar, hit like share it with someone who needs healing, and subscribe for more real-life stories of truth and redemption.